Hello, everybody. Hello. That was my leprechaun voice. Good morning. How's everybody doing? It's so wonderful to be here. Hi. Welcome. I'm going to let y'all come on into the room while I sip some tea. Come on into the room, everybody. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, good morning. Or good afternoon, depending on where I find you in the world, where you find me. Good afternoon, good afternoon. What's cooking, everybody? Letting you all come into the classroom. You all know who I am, but I'll say it again. My name is Manorama, and I'm here representing in the house. I'm here to talk about the Luminous Soul Method Course today. So this is a very specific periscope. Sometimes we have periscopes that are focused on various topics, but today we're focusing on your questions and answers about the Luminous Soul Method teleclass and some other good stuff. I'll see if we get any questions to start out. Let me say a few things about it, and then let's see if any questions start to come about. So again, I know a few more of you have just come into the classroom. My name is Manorama, and I'm from the School of Sanskrit Studies and the Luminous Soul Method, and here I am, and I'm talking today, I'm making myself available to chat with you all about the Luminous Soul Method teleclass series, and what it is that we do in that teleclass series. We do a lot. It is a method that I have realized after over 20-something years of immersion practice. It's almost 32 years that I've been with my teacher, so it's been a long time. There are 9 distinct pillars that I have come to realize that if a person, I don't know if the word is educates themselves, but if you learn how to connect with these specific pillars, and if you work with them on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, it's going to start to change your life. It's going to change your life dramatically. And I have seen that in the students that I've worked with in these pillars, both in the Luminous Soul teleclass from last year, as well as in students that I've worked individually with through these various pillars. And they are, you know, it might be nice if I take my little board. Where did I put that board? Hang on 1 second. Here it is. So I'm going to use my little pink board. So let me just write some things down for you. Prana is the first pillar in the Luminous Soul Method, and we start to talk about prana and what is prana. So I'll start off with just some basics for you. I'm going to abbreviate here. So let's start here. Prana is your energy, your life force, your breath, or your soul. So prana is your energy, your life force, your breath, or your soul. And what we do in the Luminous Soul Method is we start to talk about prana and what it is and what it isn't, and why is it an important component for someone who wants to live a deeply fulfilled life. Why is it important to know that? What's the value of that? What's the value of understanding prana? And if we just relegate it to oh, it's your breath, it's your life force, and we're just kind of like, yeah, I know breath, I know life force, then we kind of do this thing where we go to sleep to it. But if we don't fall asleep to our energy, and if we learn weekly how to work with our energy, it makes a huge difference. And so I ask students various questions and contemplations that they can work with on a weekly basis to come into greater harmony and understanding around the topic of prana. And when you start to bring it from kind of like a page or the materials that we work with into your actual life, when you start to take it from the page and bring it into your actual life, it starts to integrate into your daily thinking process, your daily practice, which is a thoughtless process. And you get this support from the Luminous Soul community because you're in a classroom with so many people, and of course myself, where you're kind of contemplating these ideas and you're working with these exercises, and then you get to hear how somebody else worked with it, or you get to hear how Janie from Toronto worked with it, just like Josh from Utah. You get to start to hear how different people are working with these exercises. And one of the things that people often remark when it comes to teleclasses that's so common, they say that they never thought this would be the case, but they really like the comments that other people make because they didn't know they had those questions, but but by listening and by hearing, they say, oh my gosh, I really have that question that, hearts to you too, that Josh had in Utah, or I really had that question that Margaret had. And that has a big impact on their practice because they start to see that they're not in an isolated bubble practicing these exercises in Luminous Soul. And it starts to broaden out. They have like a community. And then, you can gather as a community. Of course, we're gathering right now. We're gathering in New York City in a couple of weeks for the urban retreat, the I Am Luminous Urban Retreat. So at different points throughout the year, we can gather. But then we can also do our work at home within the context of our very modern lives. I talk also in the teleclass series of the Luminous Soul teleclass series about Shishya and what the value of being a student is. What is the value of being a student? How is that useful? How is that beneficial? What does that even mean? Do we understand what it means to be a student, right? It doesn't even seem like it would be a pillar. And yet, if we can understand true studentship, it can really impact our practice and shift things dramatically for us. And then I go on and I talk about the power of mantra and sound in Sanskrit, and how that's obviously something very strong in me, for those of you who know my background in Sanskrit. But how are words, how are they powerful? How do they affect us? How do we work with mantra on a daily basis in our very modern lives to grow our capacity? You see, it's like the pillars, they layer on top of each other. They're not in isolation, and each of them relates with the next. To help us come into a greater understanding of our soul and how to work with that. It's kind of funny, when I was a kid, my parents talked about the soul. Oh, the soul is so important. The soul was critical, and yet nobody knew how to access it. Nobody knew how to access it. It's the most important part of us, but no one knew how to connect with it, how to access it. And I came to find out that accessing it is pretty darn important. It's like super important. And to stay in connection with your soul through various exercises until it becomes your actual experience is life-changing. Truly life-changing. So it really has an impact, and I've seen this over and over again. If any of you are were in the course last year, you can throw some hearts down. I'm not sure if it's only new people, but if you were in the course last year, I got so many beautiful comments from the students from last year. Hi, some of you are here. Great. Okay, so then we go on, we talk about vidya and how do we access and decode this kind of map that's left over from the rishis and the yogis. How do we decode this map? That's a whole study, how do I relate with these different yogic texts, these different yogic maps? How can they help me go deeper into my soul understanding, into my practice? Okay? And we talk about meditation That's going to be the next pillar, and that's going to be where we're going to talk about the art of spending time with you. What does that actually look like? And then I also talk almost in every pillar, what are the pitfalls? What are the ways in which, whoops, I'm going to lose the camera. What are the ways in which, this case has a sliding case. So I also talk about what are the ways in which I get confused about the teaching, or I'm uncomfortable, like not me personally, but where would somebody get uncomfortable? Where would they get confused? Because I think this idea that we know what these things mean just because we understand the English doesn't necessarily mean we understand them. And so I talk oftentimes in the various pillars about what it is and what it isn't. And believe it or not, knowing what something isn't is incredibly useful for you. Yeah, that's very helpful, right? Knowing what it isn't is really helpful, because then it helps you go, oh, I was always thinking it was this, and now I find out that it's that. So that's also very useful. The meditation module focuses on the art of spending time with you. Yeah, that's really useful. I know students really commented on that. Okay, so module 5 is about the art of spending time with you, what that looks like, what are the pitfalls, what are the difficulties that we may encounter. Maybe you don't encounter all the difficulties, but it certainly is nice to know what they might be. And you're probably going to notice some of the difficulties in your own practice. You're going to say, oh yeah, I have that one, or I have that one. Then we talk about bhakti in our 6th Luminous Soul Method pillar. We talk about bhakti, which is the path of devotion. And I talk about how do we grow through devotion? What is it that devotion, is so, why is it so enriching? I mean, we get into this place around the context of devotion. Some of us are more devoted, some of us are less devoted. Some of us feel a little skeptical of devotion. We don't want to be manipulated. Others feel like it is such a sweet and amazing place to be. But nobody can deny that the experience of pure devotion is actually a sweet spot. And the more that we're able to access that within the context of our relationship with our practice, it's going to change things. The more you can feel safe to enter into that, or look at the places where it's gotten a little bit jiggy, so you can get back into that sweet spot. These different pillars, they build strengths in you. They build strengths, and those strengths create other strengths. Excuse me. Those strengths give rise to other strengths. Let me have some water. And those other strengths, they all start to kind of network up, and it forms this very strong core in you. So we continue onwards. Okay, what else do we have here? Then we might talk about seva, which is, of course, I don't know, I guess it's a bit of a hot topic, right? Because, I talk about what do I talk about in seva? The sneaky martyr. I always tell people nobody needs another sneaky martyr. And you don't need to be shamed into giving more. You need to come to a place where you understand how seva is really coming from your heart. So that's why it follows after devotion in the pillar lineup. It's like it has to come from your heart. If it's coming from a sense of force or a sense of I should be more generous, that's kind of the shame game. And if it's coming from, the sneaky martyr, that's not really great either. You're just going to get into trouble. So those are some of the pitfalls that we find in the seva pillar, and then we work with them. I talk about how can you work with this, and how can you actually access this place in yourself. Sorry, I have a little cold for the last couple days. How can you access this place in yourself where you're moving through the channel of seva and exploring life from that very meaningful place? And I describe the various different types of seva. There's about 3 or 4 different types of seva that you can engage, and they don't have to be huge. They don't have to be huge monetarily, huge energetically, but there's different levels of how you can engage the practice or the process at any given time. And then we start to move into the last 2 modules, which are not opened to, those are not modules that are open for a variety of reasons, and I'll say more about that in a second. But they're closed modules only to students who've been taking the course. They are the module and the pillar of integration and compassion. So the pillar of integration, the reason you can't join that one is because if you haven't taken any other pillars, what are you going to integrate, right? Integrate integration, yeah, but you need other things to integrate. So that's a later pillar. And then compassion has to be really foundational. It really has to build. Otherwise, it just becomes a forced thing, has been my observation. Okay? So these are some of the ways in which we move through the various pillars. Now, you wouldn't think on some level, like, how would that change my life? It really changes your life. You can't believe the comments that I have received. I probably should have pulled them up, but they're just, maybe Leela, you can pull up a couple of them. But they're just amazing, the comments that people have made from their experience taking the Luminous Soul Method teleclass, which is why I decided to run it again this year, but this will be the last year for a little while. So as you move through the various pillars, you're going to find new strengths growing in you, less procrastination, less stuckness in your practice. You know, there's going to be a lot more fluidity. And of course, one of the things, I'll just say it point blank, you're going to get my eyes on your practice. And that's not a joke, because I've been working with all of this for years. So it's, you know, when I look at, because you have little homework exercises at the end, or when you ask questions and so on, but I look at what is happening for the student each week that we meet in these weekly sessions, and I go, okay, and I go, look, I like what you're working with here. There, I want you to shift your attention. Or I'll say, yeah, you're on the right track here, but there, not so much. Or maybe I'll just say, oh, great, you're on the right track. How great is it to know that you're on the right track? It's really great to know, because sometimes you could be on the right track and you don't know. Or sometimes you can be on the wrong track with your practice and you don't know. So some of these things are very, very useful. Another thing is, just to give you some logistics about the class. The class is going to be on Tuesday nights. Yeah, that's useful. Tuesdays in the New York time. So it's Tuesday nights from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. with a 10-minute break in between. We always take a 10-minute break. And again, the courses are going to be recorded. You know, if you can't make the live class, you have up to 5 days to listen to the call. So what questions do you have, if you have any? I'll wait for you. We always have meditation, chanting, and we always have some wisdom discussion, of course, on the pillar that we're working on. And sometimes I'll get a little spark of something from people. Like somebody will say something, I say, you know, let me discuss this a little bit more. I think a lot of students might have this question or this interest. The whole platform is on telephone, which is called a teleclass or a telecourse. It's so easy. You just pop your earbuds in, you get a call-in number, and you get a PIN code, and you're in the class at the appointed time. And again, if you need to miss, you just let the assistant know, and then she sends you the recording afterwards, and you can listen down and then send in the homework after. The course starts, when does it start? March 15th. And I'm so looking forward to it. I can't wait to kick it off. We've got so many people joining, so it's great. A lot of energy. I'm super excited. But I wanted to meet with you all and give you an opportunity, if you have any questions, to connect in or to hear what I have to say about the kind of the structure of the course. There's always 2 assistants. Hi, Ange. Any questions, my lovelies? I don't even know how you write a question on this platform, as a matter of fact. I'll have to learn. Welcome. As we say in Sanskrit, suswagatam. You're welcome. Well, while you're thinking up your questions, I'm going to tell you, I've been having my tea lately with coconut and almond milk, and it is fabulous. Okay, hi Ma. I'm here to let everyone know how wonderful the Luminous Soul Method is. A game changer for me. Oh, what an angel you are. I know, so many people wrote in and they just said it was so freaking fabulous. Thank you so much for that. That's really, really nice. Thank you so much. Who's that? Eamon? How beautiful. Thank you. That's so great. Thank you guys. Yeah, I'm famous for creating these little exercises, and if you do these small little digestible exercises, little tiny ones to bring the practice into your life, step by step, day by day, you're going to start to see little incremental changes, and before you know it, it's going to be like, wow, totally different. Your perspective is going to shift. You're going to start to see from a much larger landscape, and that changes the whole course of your life. It changes your relationship with your husband or your wife, with your children, with your friends, with your job. Helps you accomplish, like, what do you really want in your life? And it helps you get clear about that and then start to meet that with a sense of real confidence in yourself, and it infuses certainly your yogic practice. So, cheers to that. Ma, have you discussed breakout groups and how they work? I didn't really explain that, but great question. So we have this thing in class called breakout groups. Great point, Ange. I appreciate that. So every time we have a class, we have what's called breakout groups at the end. And after I've given some discussion, I say, like, why don't you guys spend some time together sharing what opened up for you today in the call. And what I do is I put everybody in these little closed groups. So you'll be in like a group of 3 or 4, and then you'll share in your group what opened up for you, like what you took away from that discussion with Ma or Manorama, and what, you know, Joe took and what John took, and everybody kind of gathers together and they share. It's kind of like, look what's in my little bucket. This is what I got. This is what I got. But what ends up happening is, and I'm not in the sessions, but people remark about those sessions often. So thanks for mentioning that, Inge. They are like, they talk about how, you know, how really supportive, and you can say something about it, Ange, but how supportive those groups are, because it's like, you're there with your fellow classmates and you're like struggling and they're struggling, and you guys all put stuff on the table, or you're inspired by something and maybe the other person missed it somehow just because they are a different person, because everybody takes a different thing, and they go, you know what? They hear you repeat it in the breakout group and they're like, oh my gosh, that really spoke to me. That people really love those breakout groups where they can gather together and connect and share with each other, like, you know, this or that teaching, or do you remember what she said about this, or this is how I'm working with this, etc., etc. So do you have anything to add to that, Ange? Because I just know you're in the breakout groups, whereas I'm not, but I know that, I mean, occasionally I pop into them, but not only is it very supportive, it's a very safe environment. Yeah, it's safe. Everybody is safe to kind of share, get the kind of support that they need to continue growing themselves in the Luminous Soul Method, and really expand their practice and their life and their dialogue with self. So yeah, it's really great. Thanks so much for that, because again, your questions, everybody, really help. You know, what did you say? Everyone listens compassionately and is really there for everyone else. It's really useful to hear what others have taken from the class, Eamon says. That's great. So it is really useful to hear what other people take from the class. It's so useful. You know, I learned so much from my fellow, you know, when I was developing myself in the practice, I learned so much from other people, from what they were taking or what they had distilled, or where they were confused even, and where they got clear. So it's very supportive. It's like it becomes just a wonderful process. Yeah, that whole thing is really great, and people remark on it again and again and again. And even Vidya, who's not in this Periscope right now, but she was one of the class assists and has been with me for, I don't know, somewhere between 11 and 13 years. We were in satsang the other day down at my kutir, my little temple in the West Village, and I have these micro satsangs that I offer, And that's what I call them, micro satsangs, because they're very small. Because my apartment is very New York small, that little office. Anyway, and she was like, I said, Vidya, could you say something about the teleclass series? Just because some people haven't heard about the Luminous Soul Method teleclass series. And she just, you should have seen her face. She lit up and she just said, it's great. It's so good. I learned so much. And she learned so much, and she's an assistant in the class. She's like, I learned so much. It put so many of the pieces together for me that, I didn't know, or I wasn't able to kind of do this. And she goes, I can't wait for level 2. So I said, that's cute. It's coming around the mountain, but let me first do one with everybody one more time. Okay, so these are some things that you can work with and that you can develop yourself in. Some people choose to take single modules because they're like, I'm really into that module. And they say, I'm going to just take this module. Remember, you can't take the module 8 and 9. Those aren't options on their own. You have to have taken the course. But the next module up is Prana, and that's the first module. It's